Another time when we were in India, Prabhupada was actually quite upset because some of his, or one godbrother or some godbrothers were critical of our sannyasis because they didn't speak Sanskrit or they couldn't read Sanskrit. Prabhupada said, where does it say anywhere that one must be able to read Sanskrit to go back to Godhead? Where does it say that? He's quite adamant about this. And he said, my disciples may be, it was at the same time, he said, my disciples may be disqualified in so many ways. He said, but one qualification they have, he was speaking to some Indian people in Vrindavan who were gathered in his room. He said, but one qualification they have, he said, whatever I tell them to do, they will do it. They have full faith in whatever I say. So, I mean, I appreciated the point because compared with the gentlemen who were sitting there, there were many gentlemen and saintly persons, we certainly were not qualified in so many ways in terms of etiquette. And Prabhupada, in fact, said that. He said, I know often they make mistakes in terms of etiquette. He said, but whatever I tell them to do, they will do. So our good fortune was that we were following the Lord's pure devotee. And, you know, despite all disqualifications, that one qualification surpassed every good qualification anyone else might have.
So one night, Srila Prabhupada called for us to come and visit him in his quarters at 26 2nd Avenue. In other words, Srila Prabhupada's apart, where he's staying is at 26 2nd Avenue, but the new temple is a block or two down the street at 61 2nd Avenue. So we all knew the history and the privilege of seeing Srila Prabhupada at 26 2nd Avenue, so it was really wonderful. So Rukmini and Saradiya and I, we were on our way, but Saradiya at the last minute decided she didn't want to come. There was some practical thing with her laundry or something like that. So Rukmini and I, the minute that we walk in through the door, Srila Prabhupada said, where is Saradiya? And the second we just come in the door, he says, where is Saradiya? And then we understood that Srila Prabhupada was very concerned for each of his daughters, where they were, how they were being engaged, how they were feeling, because there were some feelings there also for why she had stayed back.
And then also Prabhupada said that the dresser and the cleanser are the same. He said it didn't matter. One shouldn't think that because he's dressing the deity or because he's a manager, he's more important than the person who's actually washing the pots or cleaning the temple. He said the dresser and the cleanser, they are the same. We're all serving Krishna, and Krishna sees every devotee's service equally.
This story, I think, illustrates how Prabhupada had a completely personal, individual relationship with each disciple, and what was appropriate for one person, maybe not for another, depending on the special relationship each had with Prabhupada. One time we were walking on the beach in Los Angeles, Venice Beach, and there was an intelligent young Indian boy that Prabhupada was obviously trying to cultivate and bring into the Krishna consciousness movement. So the boy came apparently from a good Hindu background, and as Prabhupada was speaking, he would occasionally quote some Sanskrit from the Bhagavad Gita, and Prabhupada would give him tremendous praise. Well, that's very nice, so you know that verse, very good, it's very good. And Prabhupada was encouraging him very much to quote these Gita verses. So I began to think, boy, this boy is getting so much attention and mercy from Prabhupada by quoting Gita verses. I know Gita verses. So I began to think, I want to get some of this mercy myself. But of course, this boy was just an outsider that Prabhupada was trying to cultivate. I was supposed to be Prabhupada's, trusted son. To make a long story short, as we were driving back, we were a couple of blocks away from the temple, I said, Prabhupada said something, I said, oh yes, Prabhupada, that reminds me of the Bhagavad Gita verse. And I quoted the Sanskrit. So Prabhupada just turned around and gave me this look and said, there are so many verses. And so that's the last time I ever tried that one.
Srila Prabhupada said, I had no reason to leave Vrindavan to come here. And we all were wondering why Srila Prabhupada had said that. it was almost as though there was a change, that something was going on, and we had displeased him or something. It was such a heavy thing for him to say. And then he said, "And you have no reason to come here to see me, except Krishna." And it was so beautiful, the way that that smile came up, and he said that. He said, and then he looked at all of our eyes, and he went right around the room. He said, "I want that each of you open a center." And he said, this Krishna consciousness must go all over the world. So later in that darshan then, Rukmini asked, well, does that mean women too? And Srila Prabhupada said, yes. And then he mentioned the person that I was named after, Janavamata. And he said that she had been a great preacher in Krishna consciousness.
He was in Australia on his way back to India, and he sent me a telegram. You preach if mass, I preach if class. That's all it said. Because I described to him about a Pandal program, a large outdoor public program that we were arranging for like 10 days or something, and he just, and I said, would you do it? Are you willing to do it so we can advertise? And he said, that was the telegram. You preach if mass, I preach if class.
Oh, one thing that Prabhupada said about to Sudama Maharaj, this was before I got to Hawaii, but the devotees always it was like a big quote for the devotees, was that Prabhupada had told Sudama Maharaj about the devotees could maintain their health by going swimming every day in the ocean. And Sudama Maharaj freaked out because that would mean the devotees would go swimming all day. They wouldn't just take a dip and come out. They would go swimming all day. And he was like, Prabhupada, no, no, no. So Prabhupada said, okay, but at least once a week they must go swimming. So it was very joyful in Hawaii. It was very, very pleasant. But as I said, Prabhupada regularly tried to keep us, remind us of we are still in the material world even though we are on a heavenly planet, and to pay attention to doing our service and not get too distracted by the heavenly pleasures.
Gargamuni's introduced to Srila Prabhupada, we have just begun spiritual sky incense. So then Srila Prabhupada said, so Birbhadra, he's this little 12-year-old servant, like that. Birbhadra, you should work, or maybe it was Garish, it was one of the two boys. He said, you should work for Gargamuni. And Gargamuni, you should pay something to Birbhadra. And so we're all astounded. Here's a little boy that's going to be getting money. And the little boy, he's like beaming, I'm going to have money, like even if it's $5, it's more than any brahmachari had at that time, So Srila Prabhupada reiterates it again. He says, so you will work for Gargamuni, and Gargamuni, you will pay something to Birbhadra. So it just deepens it, and then Srila Prabhupada said it again, and he said, and Birbhadra, you give the money to me. And then the look on his face, Birbhadra's face, we're all laughing. So I wanted to be a part of that kind of atmosphere. Everything's light and joyful and intimate, and I wanted to be part of that. So I asked Srila Prabhupada, Swamiji, when I chant Hare Krishna, can I pray for all living entities? And Srila Prabhupada answered me, You know all living entities? You know all living entities? No, you pray to Krishna and you let Krishna take care of all living entities.
Prabhupada gave Gayatri Mantra. First, I think he did it first in Boston, and then he came to San Francisco and gave some of us Gayatri Mantra. It was September 1968. So, he gave out a sheet with the Gayatri Mantras after teaching us how to chant. Anyway, Jayananda was having some difficulty pronouncing the mantras, so he decided that he should go and ask Srila Prabhupada how to properly pronounce the mantras. So he took me along with him. And we sat down in front of Srila Prabhupada. Prabhupada told him to go ahead and try to pronounce the mantras. And as Jayananda tried to pronounce the mantras, Prabhupada just leaned back and started roaring with laughter. And Prabhupada just shook his head and said, it's hopeless. He said, but it doesn't matter. He said, because you're so sincere, Krishna will accept it. Krishna will accept your chanting.